So I was innocently browsing amongst fanfiction not long ago, minding my own business as I sorted through the mountains of noobishness that tend to arise from this fandom, when I stumbled across this.
Fan work.
You know, Gleamstar's face there, it kinda looks like she's in the sun. A shining beacon of light casting love over us all. It's a little familiar, huh? Starkit sort of reads as a vehicle for edgy atheist tweens to razzle the fundy Christian sects of the fandom. It just makes me wonder, just who Dark Roses actually was. Or, well, I suppose I should say were. Because I don't need to wonder. I already know who they are. Welcome back to Starkit, y'all. We're in for a doozy here, if I do say so myself. That said, I highly suggest that if you're new to Starkit's Prophecy, that you watch my previous video on the subject. It covers the basic premise of the fic and discusses the general culture of the 2009 fandom, so it'll give you a much better idea of what to expect from the second half. For now, it's time to pick up where I left off. When we last spoke, or I spoke at you, I suppose, I stated that I knew who wrote Starkit's Prophecy, and I do, with 100% certainty. I guarantee that by the end of this video, you too shall know who the scamps behind the Warriors fandom's most infamous trollfic are. If you are not satisfied, well, I can't exactly give you your money back or your time back, but here's a consolation prize. Now, I can already guess what you're thinking. Who are the brains behind Starkit, you ask? How do I know who they are, you query? Get on with it already, you blithering flesh rat, you shriek. Well, since you so politely demanded, I'll be right out with it. None of this theatrical nonsense. No siree, we've waited over 12 years, let's now make it 13, shall we? So I wrote that back in February of 2022, and we've absolutely hit the 13-year mark by now with how slow I am, and my god. Yes, following tens of hours of research and careful deduction, we here at Answered Riddle Incorporated have determined that the authors behind X Dark Roses X are none other than... You didn't really think I'd just tell you 5 minutes into the video, did you? Where's the fun in that? Nah, mate, y'all get to experience this spiraling rabbit hellhole the way I experienced it. Indulge me, if you will, I spent, more hours of my life than I would like to admit doing all of this. What I will tell you is that in all of my research, I've never seen anyone outright claim to have written Starkit, which I personally find fascinating. As the foundational basis for Starkit, My Immortal had all sorts of nonsense with fraudulent claims of authorship, with one dubious individual even going so far as to lie that the fic was all an elaborate 11-year scheme to locate her long-lost brother in the American foster care system. Yeah, that really happened, and no, that is somehow not the most bizarre claim to authorship in My Immortal's colorful history. Check out Sarah Zed's videos on the subject if you're curious, cause it's one heck of a trip. All that being said, Starkit differentiates itself from My Immortal in that it plays up the ironic homophobia and Christianity baiting to articulate its satire. While used to parodical effect, the themes nevertheless may have put folks off from claiming authorship. Moreover, I can't help but think that Moon Kitty's animated adaptation has become the definitive Starkit in people's minds. So much so that you have people thinking to this day that she secretly wrote it. With all those factors in mind, I reckon that the actual author's identity just became rather irrelevant for most folk, you know? I admit that I didn't set out looking to unearth Starkit's author. Well, at least not initially. I'd toyed with the idea in my head, sure, as a sort of LOL what-if scenario, but I never thought it'd be in any way possible. But once I start digging, I have a nasty habit of being unable to stop digging. And well, I dug, and well, now here we are. And now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves in this mystery here, let's first establish what we know about xdark.roses X. Back in December 2021, I was only just beginning to journey down the wayward Starkitian path when I began to compile a vague collection of traits that I believed comprised the author's character. Because, as we've previously established, Dark Roses is very much a character in her own right. She's just as fictional as Gleamstar is, propped up only by thinly veiled plausible deniability. By roughly outlining these characters' attributes, it helped me better understand the story itself and what the authors were trying to say. And, unbeknownst to me at the time, this little mental checklist became the basis of my profile for Dark Roses. A profile, or at least one tailored for my own purposes, is a handy little collection of behavioral qualities that one can infer from a crime scene. Starkit isn't a crime scene, of course, though I suspect the folks over at Critics United might suggest otherwise, but it's still enough evidential material that we can deduce specific things about the authors in question. Thing number 1. Dark Roses had to be a Warriors fan. Likely a longtime fan at that, and particularly well-versed in fandom predilections. I know, you're probably going, well, duh, Riddle, why else would you write a Warriors fanfic? To that end, I say, how many reboots have you seen where the directors and showrunners have absolutely zero familiarity with the source material, consequently producing a final product akin to fictional blasphemy? Many. My point is that Dark Roses wasn't just your run-of-the-mill outside troll cashing in on cheap laughs at the fandom's expense. No, the authors were intimately familiar with the book series and fandom itself, which is evidenced enough by the intrinsic bite to Starkit's satire for a 2009 audience. Like hot diggity dog, look at them there chompers. Fandom in-jokes throughout the fic, such as Gleamstar refusing to be named Star, demonstrably illustrate that whoever wrote the fanwork actively engaged with the Warrior Cats online community and kept up to date with the book's release schedule. Thing number 2. Dark Roses had to be disillusioned with the Warriors fandom and openly critical of it. A less than subtle disdain for the community pervades Starkit's writing, contorting the source material to extremes intent on mocking a fanbase thought impossible to please. With how, pointed the fic's parody can be, I can't help but wager this is far from the first time Miss Old Roses had some choice words for the fandom at large. Moreover, subject familiarity is crucial to writing effective satire, as satire intentionally mocks human follies or vices with the intent of correcting or criticizing those shortcomings of human nature. In other words, Dark Roses had to be acutely familiar with the fandom in order to satirize its perceived follies. Thing number 3. Dark Roses had to be critical of Christianity as a religion, which, duh. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Starkit reads like a vehicle for edgy atheist tweens to razzle the fundy Christian sex of the fandom. No one but a kid with a chip on their shoulder and a bone to pick would have written Starkit. Thing number 4. Dark Roses had to be some sort of letter from the alphabet soup, if you catch my drift. We here in the LGBT+ community proudly enjoy taking the piss out of homophobes, and Starkit was quite adept at messing with the overtly fundamentalist variety. And lastly, this is less of a proper thing TM, but, well, let's call it a strong hunch. Thing number 4.9. Dark Roses likely exhibited an unusually strong attachment to Starkit in anonymity. Without the Starkitian persona, I suspect the authors as regular forum-goers likely seem to hyperfixate on the fanwork to those not in the know. Granted, this theory is contingent on whether Dark Roses engaged with the fandom at all over the course of Starkit's run. However, I too was once a chronically online teenager, investing my energy not into scholarly academics, but rather into my hyperfixations. And if my fic suddenly skyrocketed to fandom virality, and everyone and their mother began talking about its authorship, you bet my sweet bippy I'd be singing its praises to the heavens in public, and crowing over my sneaky genius in private. Listen, man, we were kids, and virality was a far less intimidating objective in its constriction to our little corners of the internet. This was an era where Alley Cat Nia breaking the 10,000 subscriber mark was seen as the end-all be-all, the crowning achievement we hapless onlookers could only hope to attain. Look at us now. Moon Kitty's by far the largest Warrior Cat specific channel with over 226,000 subscribers as of writing. And in the grand scheme of things, even that's small-time potatoes compared to channels with hundreds of millions of followers. So yeah, with the nature of the internet being what it was at the time, our juvenile age demographic, and the sudden popularity of Starkit in a niche corner of fandom, I don't think I'm too far off base here, assuming the author would delight in plugging their bad fic at every conceivable opportunity. Still, this wasn't so much a guaranteed box I intended to tick as it was a relative intuition. Just something to remember going forward. So, we've got our 4.9 general profile traits to keep in mind. Dark Roses had to be a Warriors fan. They had to be disillusioned with the fan base and openly critical of it. They had to have a bone to pick with Christianity. They were likely to describe themselves as either queer or as an ally to the community. And they likely had a vested interest in Starkit as a fan work. All that being said, let's break out the red string and pull up a bulletin board, cause boy howdy, this yarn's got legs.